Flying into Australia, you know, this place that, you know, you've heard a lot about, people are very interested in, you know, you think of kangaroos and in the outback. English is the first language, but I must say it was the funniest thing because it took me a long time to figure out what they were trying to say. So I was on the train and the conductor comes up and he says, "Give me a ticket, mate." And I'm just like, what? You know, I was trying to figure out what it is. And he started getting upset at me, like, "Give me a ticket, mate." And then he was saying, "Give me your ticket, mate." You know, he's like, "I just wanted to see my ticket." And I was just like, I don't understand you people. What's going on? Australia is home to the most poisonous, like, snakes and spiders in the world, you know. it's kind of a, not a great honor, but they have that. And so, you know, we were always kind of like freaking out about the different spiders or whatever we might encounter. But there was one, thankfully it wasn't poisonous, but it's got to be the ugliest, most freakiest spider you'll ever encounter in your life. It was called the huntsman. And in my first area in our flat, I mean, I just looked on the wall and there's a spider the size of my hand just kind of crawling along there. And it was interesting because when you approached it, you know, and you wanted to try to do something with it, it would like turn and literally look at you, you know. And then sometimes it would like raise its front legs and like come after you. It was just like, oh! But so it was quite funny. Thankfully they weren't poisonous, but they're just freaky. And so that was a fun experience being introduced to Australia with that and their wildlife. But yeah, I mean, you know, they have a white tail and a redback, you know what they call them, poisonous little spiders. But one of my favorite was actually while I was serving in the little island of Tasmania, just off the coast of Victoria, down south, and there are Tasmanian devils. I mean, I went down there and the first thing I noticed is that there was a lot of roadkill on the road, and most of them were wombats. And these wombats are like these cute creatures, but they have these backs that are as hard as steel, you know? And so it's like they literally would ruin cars. I mean, it would kill the poor animal, but they would just like rip a car apart. But sometimes you just see miles of these poor dead animals on the road. It was big wildlife, you know. But also in Tasmania, it was amazing because, you know, we here, you know, you have these exotic birds that we consider exotic and they're expensive, these cockatoos and these parrots and other things like that. And there, they were just running wild in huge flocks. And it was just amazing to me to just see these beautiful, beautiful birds just running around, just flying around, like, you know, in their home state. It was amazing. And then we also went to this little wildlife preserve and we were able to actually experience a Tasmanian devil. And they were these incredible little creatures. It was so fun because I kind of thought of them as kind of being a cross between a pig and a rat. I know that's kind of strange, but they were just these amazing animals, but they were scavengers, but they had these jaws of steel and these teeth that were rock hard and very sharp. And so they would literally just feed them like bone, you know, and parts of the animal that had bone in it, and they would just crunch right through it. And they had this awful screech that's just, you know, and that's actually how they got their names, because when the settlers first came there, they would hear these awful high-pitched screams, and they would shine their light into the forest or whatever, and they see these glowing red eyes of the devils, and so that's why they call them the Tasmanian devils. That's where they got their name from. But just a fascinating creature. But you know, you don't want to get too close to it. But they were just scavengers, and so I think that's where the cartoonish Tasmanian devil kind of got where they picked up his characteristics from. But some of the people that we would go and teach out in Tasmania was out on these dirt roads out through the forest, you know, and we'd have wallabies, these, you know, kind of miniature kangaroos or wallabies, and they would just jump across the road, you know. It's just part of the wildlife, like a deer around here in Utah. And so you'd see kangaroos all the time, and I actually ate kangaroo. It was fascinating because, you know, animals that you'd never see anywhere else in the world, and just beautiful wildlife. I was a picky eater, so going there I was like, oh dear. But they love custard. They love pouring custard on stuff, and one of the desserts we had, one of the first encounters I had with food was this dessert where it was kind of a pudding, and they would put custard on top of it, you know. And at first I was kind of like, oh, I don't know about this, but it was really, really good, and so I got to learn that. But you know, the diet is very similar to what we have here. They love their fresh fruits though, and they have glorious fruit over there. I mean, just beautiful. About anything, you know, passion fruit and anything you can think of, and it was just glorious. So they love their fruits, and they love their lamb. They got a lot of lamb out there, and other meats, and they also love squash, but they would call it pumpkin. So they have pumpkin soup, and it was beautiful. It was very nice, very tasty. If you're a really picky eater, you're pretty well fine there in Australia. Had a lot of the same stuff. They had many of the same like fast food places that we have here, and sometimes under a different name, but it was still the same place. And so yeah, you were fine. Meat pies were awesome. That was also popular there in Australia, that we don't really have here. These little pies and meat, and so that was fun. One of the things that people like to associate Australia with is the Vegemite and Marmite. This really highly salty, concentrated spread that they would put on toast and stuff, and and sometimes they think we're real really wimpy because we couldn't handle it. And it just tastes terrible. But they're like, oh, the problem with Americans is you guys just put too much of it on there. You just got to do a thin spread. That's what it was. But so that was fun to kind of experience some Vegemite and Marmite. And the other thing that we loved is cordial, which was basically just this highly concentrated syrup that you would pour in of different flavors, and you just mix that with water, and it was just kind of a punch. But they loved their cordial. Cordial was fun. And then I loved their cookies and their chocolate that they have, because they had Cadbury. They had a Cadbury factory like there in Australia, and so Cadbury was like the chocolate of choice there, and so very high quality chocolate. It was lovely. And then one of my favorite desserts that they are very famous for is pavlova, and it's this kind of it's a very fluffy kind of an egg mixture. I can't even remember what it was as kind of a base, very light and fluffy. But on top of it, they would put all of these fruits. So the kiwis, the guava, the passion fruit, the mango, especially, the just strawberries, anything we put on top of it. So that was a favorite dessert of theirs, and that was lovely. They're lovely people, and very diverse people. One thing, especially with Melbourne, but I think kind of all over Australia, it's an incredible melting pot. In fact, I heard, I haven't verified this, but they have like one of the largest populations of Greek, Italian, Jews outside their home countries in the world, one of them. And so it was really unique, because when you go tracting in different places, you'd come across all sorts of nationalities, and it wasn't just native Australian or Aboriginal people, but you have a lot of diversity there. A lot of Chinese, a lot of Spanish coming from South America, Italians, a lot of Greeks. And so it was really unique and a really wonderful experience. They're just, in general, I just found them to be a very relaxed people, very laid back. Some were pretty devout religious, especially coming from those different nationalities where, Greek Orthodox or Catholic was a strong tradition in their culture and their family. Some of them were very strong into that. But others, the average Australian, it was just, everything's fine, no worries, mate, fed income, everything's good, and that's kind of the way that they thought of religion too. It's like, yeah, it's okay. But there's some beautiful, lovely people, and I had some amazing experiences. Just like here in America, people are very politically active, and their prime minister, and they're still. I don't know the exact political term, but they're still kind of a part of the UK in a way. The Queen still has kind of a seat in there, but they have their own parliament, they have their own things like that, and you have people who strongly disagree with the way things are moving in the country, and they'll try to vote them out or whatever, but it was very similar in feel to what I experienced here personally in the United States. One of the major ones is the Melbourne Cup, and it's the big horse race. Nobody's out on the street, everybody's indoors. It's about as sacred as Christmas, to be honest, but it was a major holiday that day. Everybody had it off to be able to watch the Melbourne Cup, and so yeah, it was fun, because there were certain days like that where they had that. The Australia Open is played there in Melbourne, and that was also kind of a holiday, that whole week while that that tournament is going on in tennis. They don't celebrate, Thanksgiving necessarily, but yeah, their major sporting events is what they kind of center a lot of their holidays on, and their sacred days, and they love their sports. They especially love Aussie rules, which is Aussie football. It's kind of similar to rugby, but different. It's kind of their own thing, and everybody's very into their sports. So everybody has their own sporting teams that they just love and root for. And obviously soccer and cricket are very big sports down there, as well as of course Aussie rules and even rugby. But they love their sports and really get behind those teams. There's a lot of beautiful natural wonders there, obviously, incredible places, beautiful mountainous regions, going out back to see wildlife and various things. Going along the coast is you have this thing called the 12 Apostles, these rock formations on the south coast of the state of Victoria there. The island of Tasmania is just extraordinary. There's a lot of beautiful places and hikes and little natural wonders. You got the Sydney Opera House and a lot of really major landmarks there that are associated with Australia. And then you go further up the coast and you get into the Great Barrier Reef and some beautiful beaches and along the coastline there.